Your mind is more active during a dream than when you're awake. During sleep, the mind and body relax. After all, the primary reason why we sleep is to recover from the day's stress on the body. But why is the brain so active when you're asleep? You experience a lot during a typical day. When you're awake, your brain is so busy taking in everything you see, hear, and feel that it has little time to actually process, categorize, and store all this information. When you're asleep, your brain finally has time to make some sense of it all.
Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord, my soul to keep. And the angels watch us through the night. Angels watch me through the night. And wake up with the blessed night. And wake me with the morning light. Amen. Amen.
Premonition dreams. There are some really astounding instances in which people have foreseen things in their dreams that would happen to them. These dreams often turned out to be surprisingly accurate. For example, many of the 9/11 victims dreamed about the coming terror attack. Mark Twain dreamed about his brother's death. Abraham Lincoln dreamed that he would be assassinated. The verified dreams of 19 people foresaw the sinking of the Titanic.
What's crazy is that I usually forget my dreams, but these dreams I remember all of the details and the emotions are stronger than any other dreams I've ever had. The first dream that I had about a true crime case that I was following was in the Chris Watts case. I dreamt that I was riding in the back of Chris Watts' truck. But first I want to talk about the two dreams that I had about Summer Wells, because Summer has always just held a special place in my heart. And I'll just go ahead and say this. After my second dream of Summer, something very strange happened. So when Don Wells said that he had that dream of Summer and it was the most beautiful day that he had ever seen, and Summer was the most beautiful that he had ever seen, that's exactly what I dreamed. I dreamt this about a week or two after she went missing. In my dream, I was with a group of little girls and we were playing Ring Around the Rosies. We all had formed a circle and were holding hands, spinning around, singing and laughing. I looked straight across from me and there was Summer. She was glowing like an angel, and she was smiling and laughing. I could see the mountains and the sky behind her, and the colors were so bright and beautiful. The joy that I felt in that moment was like nothing I'd ever felt before. Like Don said about his dream, it felt like this could only be heaven. So the second dream that I had about Summer, this is the one that really freaked me out. I didn't even realize that this dream was about Summer until I woke up and kind of put things together. So the dream started with me just pacing back and forth, kind of in between two rooms in a house that I didn't recognize. It wasn't my house, and it was kind of like maybe the living room and like a dining room area that was just like all open. In the dream, I was in a state of panic, and that's really the best way that I know how to describe it. My heart was racing, I had a lot of anxiety, and I was just panicking, and I could feel it in my whole body. And so what I knew had just happened was that and I just felt like somebody had just reached into my chest and just ripped my heart out. And even in saying that, that's an understatement. Like, I don't even know how to describe the feelings that I felt. It was just so heavy, and it felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. And I began to think that whatever had happened, I didn't know. In the dream, I didn't know what had happened to my daughter. But I knew that it was my fault. I knew that whatever had happened, that I had caused it. I knew that it was something that I had done. I knew I was to blame. And the fear that I was feeling was because I knew that I was about to be in big trouble. And I was panicking because I didn't know what to do. Like, I was just so confused and lost, and I was, in my mind, I was thinking, what am I gonna do? Like nobody can know what just happened. There was a fear of people finding out what had happened, and I felt like we have to hide this. Like, nobody can find out about this. And I'm just pacing back and forth in this strange house, thinking, what am I gonna do? I can't fix this. Just panicking and not knowing what to do. I knew that if we couldn't figure out a way to hide what had happened, that things were gonna be really bad. After feeling all of these emotions and thinking that I had done something to hurt my daughter, which is something that I knew that I would never do, I started to realize in the dream that I was dreaming. I thought, this isn't me, I'm dreaming about somebody else. And in my dream, I was somebody else. Sometimes in your dreams, you just know things. It's very weird, but I just started to realize that I hadn't done this and that it was just a dream. So I started trying to get myself to wake up. I just started telling myself, this is just a dream, this didn't really happen, and you need to wake up. So I sit up in the bed, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and I kind of turn my head to the left, and I can see that my husband is just sitting there on his side of the bed. And this is probably like 2 a.m. And I don't know, it felt strange. I just had this eerie feeling, and somehow I knew that my husband had also just woken up from a dream. I don't know, I just had that feeling. The way he was just sitting there and not moving, I thought he had a bad dream too. I wanted to ask him if he had a dream, but I knew that would sound weird. And he said that he did, and he just kept sitting there. And so we just sat there in this just like weird total silence. Finally I said, well, I had a really bad dream. And he kind of just slowly turns his head and looks at me, and he said, I had a bad dream too. So I asked, what was your dream? And he just shook his head, and I could just tell that he was really uncomfortable and maybe didn't want to talk about it. And while I'm telling him about my dream, he's looking at me the whole time with this shocked look on his face. So I asked him again what he had dreamed. And I could still just tell that he was so disturbed by it. I think he even said, "I don't want to talk about it." I really had to pull it out of him. So eventually he starts telling me about his dream. And he said that he dreamt that and we were hiding her. And he literally was almost in tears telling me about it. He said he didn't want to tell me about it because he didn't understand why he had dreamt it, and he didn't want me to think that that was something that he would ever even think about. But he also said in his dream he had this feeling of it wasn't really him in the dream that was doing it, that he was somebody else in his dream. He felt the same way that I felt in my dream. He knew that he was dreaming about something that had happened to someone else. So in his dream, he was angry. He said that whatever had happened, he knew that it wasn't his fault, but he felt like he was going to be blamed for it. He explained that he felt like all of the emotions of what it would feel like if you had just lost your daughter and everything, but he was just so mad because he felt like somebody else had done something and now he was having to cover it up. He felt like he was being held responsible for something that he didn't do. In his dream, he said that he had put in this giant pipe. At first, I thought that the pipe was outside somewhere until I kind of asked him about it again later, and he said no, that he was inside of a house and there was this big pipe, and that's where he had put the. And he said that he was stuffing things down in the pipe because there was, I guess, water, and so it kept floating back up, and so he just kept stuffing anything that he could find. He was stuffing it in that pipe to kind of weigh it down. So if you could imagine dreaming that you had harmed your own child and then you had covered it up, like, it was horrifying. I was sitting in the back on the passenger side. My belief was that I was Bella. When I say I was scared and confused, I mean the kind of scared and confused that's almost inconceivable. I didn't understand what was happening. I was shaking. I could see the back of Chris's head as he was driving. He had his left hand on the steering wheel and his right arm was laid across the top of the bench seat, with his left hand placed behind the passenger headrest. He kept frantically turning his head around, not to look at me because I felt invisible to him, but to look out the back window behind us. Every few seconds, he would very quickly turn to look as if he was afraid someone was following us. I remember each time he would turn, I could see his face. I would just stare at him, desperately wondering why he looked almost as terrified as I did. I watched him very intently. I tried to study his behavior. If he moved a muscle, I was watching. I couldn't wrap my mind around why he was acting this way, but I was 100% sure of one thing. Something was wrong. Something was wrong with him. I had 1,000 questions. What's wrong with him? Why was he acting this way? Where were we going? What's going to happen? I was so unsure about everything, but I just knew that something terrible was about to happen. I could feel the panic inside of me. I just remember the terror and confusion. And that was it. The dream was over. This case has always been so shocking that a father could do this to their own children. And maybe in my mind while I was sleeping, I was imagining what those poor girls must have went through and how horrifying this would have been for them. This was not the only time that I dreamt of Bella. I don't know why, but in my dream, I just knew that I was her. It was very strange. This time, I had been researching asphyxiation and drowning because I believed that Bella was alive when he put her in the oil tanks. I still believe that. So with spending hours reading about it during the day, my mind must have kept going while I was sleeping. I dreamt that I was falling into that oil tank. I could see a circle of bright light, which was that 8-inch diameter thief hatch at the top of the tank. It was the only light I could see. I felt the feeling of free falling, like that carnival ride, the drop zone. I stared up through the rays of sunlight as the circle of light got farther and farther away until I splashed at the bottom. My eyes were wide open. I was too scared to even blink. Once I hit the bottom, I just saw blackness slowly cover my eyes from the corners in until there was total darkness. Days after Gabby went missing, I dreamt of her being found. I was the person in charge of documenting and taking photos. We were walking slowly up to the scene of where we knew her body was. We were in a wooded area, but the trees were spaced out. As we got closer, I could see Gabby lying there on the ground. She was slightly on her right side. One leg was stretched out and the other bent and laid to the side. Her head was turned to the left, opposite of the direction her body was faced. I snapped pictures, 4 to 5 pictures every few steps I took. When I was finally standing above her, I looked down at her face, which to me looked featureless. I could not see eyes, a nose, or her mouth. The way I would describe it is if you were to paint a picture of someone's face and then take your paintbrush and smear it all together. Her face looked muddy and sunken in. I took one last picture of her face, and with the flash of the camera, I woke up.